Hey guys, welcome to Mark chapter 8. I hope you've already read it. I'm so glad you've joined me. Let's jump right on into Mark 8. And in this chapter, if I had to put one word around it, it would be the word perception. Because Jesus is constantly, in this chapter, he's frequently frustrated at the apostles, the 12 disciples, for not understanding what he's trying to tell them. You see, they're focused on something else when he needs them to be focused on him. So it starts out Jesus feeding of the 4,000, and it's kind of very similar to Jesus's feeding of the 5,000. A great crowd gathered, and they had nothing to eat. He called his disciples and said, "I have compassion on the crowd because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away to their homes, they're going to faint on the way." So some of them come from far away, and his disciples, they're again like, "How do we feed them? Like, there's no food around." Oh, wait, didn't Jesus, our teacher, like feed 5,000 people one time? Why are they struggling with this at all? But so Jesus takes a few small fish and seven loaves of bread, and he feeds 4,000 men and however many women and children that were there. And it says in verse 8, and they ate and were satisfied. They took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. And there were about 4,000 people. He sent them away and immediately got in their boat and went to the district of Dalmanutha. And I think what we learned from here, our first lesson here, is that Jesus gives us more than enough. Jesus often gives us more than enough. When Jesus works in our lives, he doesn't leave room for error. He gives more than is needed a lot of the time. And so it goes into the Pharisees come to him, they're arguing with him, demanding him a sign. And I think that's very reminiscent of a lot of things that we often do. You know, we demand from God. We demand for us to have it this way, and if it's not, then we say, "God, why have you forsaken me? Why don't I have it like that? These people have it, it's unfair." We keep demanding things of God, but we have no room to demand of God. And it kind of shows what Jesus says right here in verse 14. It shows that our hearts are hard. He says, now they had forgotten to bring bread, and they only had 1 loaf with them in the boat. And he cautioned them, saying, "Watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod." So the disciples, again, they don't have food, and they're worried. And Jesus gives them a parable as an example. And he's saying, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod, the message that they're trying to share, and they just don't understand it. They go back to talking about how they don't have any bread. Like, what's leaven going to do for them? And Jesus says, "Do you not perceive?" There's our word, perceive or understand. "Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? Have ears, do you not hear? Do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up?" And so he says, "Remember when I fed the 4,000, I fed the 5,000. How many baskets did I take up?" They were like 12, and then they said 7 because those are the 2 accounts of it. But what this shows here is the disciples' hearts were hardened because their minds were set on worldly things. They were worried about food and bread. They weren't worried about heavenly things. And Jesus tells them, your hearts are hardened. You're not understanding the spiritual because you're too focused on the physical, just like the Pharisees. They're focused on the physical, demanding sign after sign after sign, and not looking to what God has already given them. The Messiah is already in front of you. Stop demanding of God when he has given you this Messiah into the world. And it just shows us it shows us again that Jesus just can provide for us. And in verse 22, they go to Bethsaida, and Jesus heals a blind man. See, their perception of the disciples is off. So Jesus goes and heals a blind man and reminds them, I can heal sight. I can reveal to you who I am. I can reveal these things to you. You just have to set your mind on me and see. I can heal the physical as well as I can heal the spiritual. So he quite literally heals a blind man. In this whole chapter, we're talking about perception, and it's awesome that that's just right in the middle of it. Jesus actually heals a blind man, because only Jesus can help us see things clearly. And then in verse 27, it's awesome because Peter seems to have this revelation. His perception is now, he's perceiving Jesus as he truly is now. It says, Jesus went on with his disciples to the village of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do you think I am?" And they told him all of these things, like Elijah, John the Baptist, other prophets, and he asked them, "But who do you say I am?" And Peter says, this is Peter's revelation, he says, "You are the Christ." And he strictly charged them not to tell anyone about it. And that's where Peter changes his names from Simon to Peter, we read in Matthew. But this is evidence of the revelation to Peter. This is the revelation from God to Peter. See, Jesus is showing Peter the truth. He is the only one who can show us the truth. And then Jesus, he's again frustrated with Peter. He says, "Get thee behind me, Satan," because Peter is hindering him from doing the right thing. And he says, "For you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." And that's our whole problem of the chapter, right? They're not setting their minds on the things of God, but the things of man. They're worried about, food. They're worried about real world things when the God who can provide for them is in their midst. And that's just another instance of this. And then as we go on, we wrap up this chapter. Jesus says, "If anyone will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross, follow me. For whoever will save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for the sake and for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul?" So we're told to set our mind on things above and it will guide our heart. So if we set our mind on the things above, then God will guide our heart. Where we look, we will walk. That's an easy way to remember it. Where we look, we will walk. Where we turn our vision, our heart will follow that way. So set your mind on the things above today, and your heart will follow. You hear the dog that wins the fight is the dog you feed. That's a quote I've heard. So feed heavenly thoughts. Set your mind on Christ. Trust in Christ, even though it doesn't always look like things are going to work out perfectly. Because the essence of the gospel is denying your heart's desire. It's following Jesus in self-denial, not in self-reliance. And that's what the disciples, they started off relying on themselves. And Jesus is saying, I'm providing for you. But they say, no, we still rely on ourselves. We don't trust you. Let's go our way and not your way, Jesus. And Jesus is just working in them, saying, like, I can show you truth. I can give you real sight. And at the end, we see Peter, he's coming to realize this. He's having revelations. And then Jesus saying, deny yourself, pick up your cross, follow me, put your vision, look to God, look to heaven. That's where the truth is. So I thank you for joining me. I ask you, take up your cross, follow Jesus today. Look to him. Set your minds on things above. Don't let the worldly troubles of the world distract you from what really matters. And I thank you for joining me. Hope to see you tomorrow.